So we're standing here at Peter's second mural on Grattan Street, and this one is of the Burning of Cork. So this is a very different image to what we were standing at in front of a minute ago. And this one, I think, even highlights again the point of the site-specific location because of the fire brigade station that was also here at the time. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Peter?
Yeah, so it's the mural itself, I suppose, is very different to the last one that we were looking at, because it's directly just an image taken. So it's like a very iconic image of the Burning of Cork, and it's quite just a very poignant image that kind of, I think, resonates just on its own. So we actually went through in the design process of this. We were bouncing back and forth, doing different skies, having different things rising from the ashes behind and all this sort of stuff. Whereas in the end, we kind of just decided just to go with the photo. Just literally try to kind of recreate the photo to the kind of best way. Obviously, we kind of put my own style subconsciously in there as I'm painting, because you're always going to get there's a certain aesthetic that will come from using a spray can. So there's always going to be it's to do something like that photorealistic, I suppose, would take months and months and months. So I'm going to put my own twist on it, but it was very much to get a sense of the scale of the artwork, or the scale of the city, and get a sense when people walk past it, that 100 years ago, the city, the main street of Cork City, was literally burnt to the ground. That they talk about comparing it to the damage that the Germans had done in Belgium during World War One, and how we reflect on that whereas we were actually living in the middle of it, and it was probably the biggest reprisal that the British took part in the whole of Ireland. And it's just that it's crazy that it was 100 years ago, but the whole message is that we rose above that, we rose out of those ashes. And I suppose with the whole COVID situation over the last year and a half, when that mural went up at the end of August, hopefully that gave people that kind of sense of lift, but also a sense of identity to the city. And it's also that idea that you walk past something and you're like, what's that? I've never seen that before, and then start looking into it and finding out about it. And I think we were discussing that earlier on, Michelle, when we were talking about the accessibility of street art and the accessibility of murals. And I think it's very a lot of people feel separation from galleries, and there is a sense that a gallery is a different world, and that they may not be welcome in that world, And I think I think street art is that thing that brings it to people, and don't get me wrong, I exhibit in galleries as well, and I suppose I'm getting the best of both worlds, but hopefully this will kind of draw people into the art world and kind of see that there can be messages through art, and that art is not just a pretty picture on a wall, it can be, but it's also to create conversation, create dialogue, and kind of create a deeper understanding of our future, or of our past, and that will hopefully help us in the future to a certain extent,
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We were even looking at, I'm not sure if you've seen the posters up around the city at the moment for Dar McGrath's site location exhibition running in the gallery that opened on the 24th of April, and that's For Those Who Tell No Lies, and it's literally bringing it right out onto the streets. And again, as you mentioned, it's making it accessible to everyone, because some people, for whether it's a fear that they don't know enough when they go inside the doors to take that first tentative step through the doors of the gallery. So this, I think, by submerging people in artworks around the city, really brings it out to people. You mentioned there a third piece that that is in works at the moment. Is this with Ardú? I believe you're one of the Shane O'Driscoll and yourself, and Paul Gleeson, are the brains behind Ardú.
Yeah, there's actually a few people involved now as well. So it's myself, Shane O'Driscoll, Paul Gleeson, and then Roseanne Kidney as well as our project manager. And then we've got Louise Barker does all the marketing and PR, and then Claire Keogh does all the documentation and stuff like that. So there really is a certain amount of the team that are kind of planning and putting together proposals and getting funding. But then there is a broader team then who are responsible for all the different aspects of it. And then Hurrah Hurrah Media or Hurrah Hurrah Design did our website and do aspects of our design. So there's so many people involved in it, and that so that's actually the commission that I'm working on at the moment. Isn't part of Ardú. So then these two, the mural behind us and the one that we were at earlier on, they're both commemorations funded. So they're from the Lord Mayor's office, and they're through the Middle Parish. So the chairman of the Middle Parish, George Patterson, he basically commissioned me to do that, and now we've just kind of like formed a kind of very close friendship actually, and kind of relationship where we're kind of just looking at kind of just creating more and more murals as part of this commemorations fund. So Ardú then is street art initiative with myself and the people I mentioned there a second ago, and that was funded by the City Council and Creative Ireland last year. So that's kind of a different initiative. So like it's brilliant. Like there's loads of murals going up around the city, and like I think we're hoping that will last for a few years, and hopefully it's not just a phase. Like as in, I suppose we've looked at street art for years and years and years, and I've always wondered, why is it not, like, why do we not have this in the city? Why do we only have a couple of murals? And yes, that's probably down to that there's not many mural artists in Cork. Like there's loads in Dublin, but there's not many in Cork. But you'd hope then this will spur young people on. I suppose that goes back to what we were discussing earlier on with the education thing, that seeing things being produced will lead to more people getting interested in it. It's like when I got interested in spray painting, it was from walking through town and looking at the graffiti car park and seeing fellas spray painting and like, that's really cool. Like that's a really cool, subculture that's going on there. And as much as I never really got into the graffiti side of things, it was something that like definitely inspired me more than anything.
Because you initially had worked a lot in stained glass, actually, so it's quite a transition from stained glass to this medium, to spray cans, really.
It is. Yeah, it's funny. I would have used spray paint since I was about 15, and I would have just been tipping away on it. And I worked at I came a funny way at it. I did art history in UCC. I left that and went straight into the Crawford after a year, and just got into the Crawford by the skin of my teeth. Actually, just made a call, and 2 weeks later applied, and I got into the Crawford. So I ended up doing stained glass. I finished my degree in contemporary applied art with Debbie Dawson in the Crawford, and I specialised in stained glass. And then I spent a bit of time over in Germany, kind of just trying to up my trade a small bit, a very small bit. I did a traineeship over there. The people, apprenticeships over there 4 or 5 years. So really, I just went over and was kind of a drop in the ocean. Just got kind of picked up bits and pieces over there. But I was always spray painting. I was always kind of doing bits and pieces of jobs here and there. And then it was the quarter block party. Keelan Sherlock from the Quarter Block Party about 4 or 5 years ago asked me to paint a mural, because I just knew him from kind of just like gigs and working in a pub that he would have kind of played in and stuff. And I remember him asking me to do a mural across from the Raven. It was a Welcome to Paradise mural through Quarter Block Party, and that kind of got things ticking over then. And that kind of led to a few more murals. And then there was a gap for a few years where I was working in stained glass, and I was kind of tipping away again. And then the last few years, I'm kind of back doing murals again. It's mad. As in, when you're with the teaching, the murals and the stained glass, you're kind of always bouncing between all of them. It can be kind of hard to find. You're constantly bouncing between mediums, which is brilliant, and you're learning from all the different mediums. But it's hard for me to focus on one of them, really. I think that will always be the way it is. Yeah,
you've mentioned there that mural that you had on Liberty Street, and it's funny because it's totally struck a chord. We're going to show you an image of it later. There, we get an image from yourself, but this lad kayaking down the River Lee, big muscular with all of these tattoos, which you've mentioned had Harry Clark influences. This through your stained glass, of course. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, but Harry Clark is nothing will ever top Harry Clark in my eyes. Like I can't ever see that happening. But that's for like so many reasons. Like he's used to colour lots of stuff, but as an illustrator, because as an illustrator, he's just outstanding. Like how a man could or anyone could live to the age that he lived and create what he created is just baffles belief. And especially working in stained glass, because it's very easy to go out and knock out a mural in a week, but it's such a long, arduous process. The illustrations, but also with stained glass, is just that's probably one of the most inspiring things about him. But he did a book of commemorations, and it was actually I think it was for the to commemorate the Irish soldiers who had died in World War One. There's a commemorative garden up in Dublin somewhere, and he did a book, and he illustrated a book of remembrance for them. It was kind of controversial at the time. I think it was hidden away for a while, and it kind of came back out again. But he has this like outstanding illustration of Hibernia with the wolfhound. So that was just one of the illustrations on that mural. There was loads of kind of just like Cork references, and kind of I was researching for this like project I was doing with UCD at the time, just like a short list, which I didn't get, but something when I just graduated from college, it was like something that I focused on for about 3 months, and I was up researching in the archives up at UCD, which was like amazing, and the folklore archives up there as well. And I just ended up getting all these illustrations and ads from newspapers, from Clive Sullis and all these different newspapers. So I was just looking for places to put them. So his arms and legs in that mural seemed to be like the right canvas for it. Like, and there was Seamus Murphy references and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it was. Seems like a long time ago, but yeah, that was probably the first big mural. Like, yeah, definitely.
So we're on a proper CorkAbout. We've just had another walk through the city, and we are now on Kyle Street, where I am standing with behind me one of the murals from the Ardú Street Art Initiative project. 7 in total around the city, with hopefully 5 more to come over the course of the year. And I just noticed as Peter was walking down the road that the locals in Pegtoomies on the corner gave him a big hello and a big welcome. And that's something that I never talked to you about yet, is a public reaction to your work, because your work is so public.
Yeah, it's part and parcel of it. It's funny. You get such a buzz from painting a big mural, from like the people around the place, especially like the people, usually like the proprietors of the business it's on the side of, or like the kind of people in the kind of locality, that you're hanging for the next one afterwards. Like the painting process is enjoyable, but the kind of interactions you have with people is like a massive part of the process. Like, yeah, definitely.
We also were just looking at a little detail. It's all about making connections, and this little detail in your work here, the scene that the fisherman, the fly fisherman, I presume, is it, has in the background, is the waterworks that we were actually filming on location, and we were just chatting about detail in works like this, and how much research goes into the works that you're producing.
Yeah, I suppose I kind of approach a lot of the mural. Well, like it depends on the mural completely, but I kind of would approach it from a few different elements and kind of try to combine those elements together. I think we were talking about research earlier on, that you kind of get the idea. The idea might come from nowhere, or you might have heavily researched it, and then it's like putting all the kind of different pieces of the puzzle together. So like that one specifically, like a lot of my work would reference architecture. Not usually my murals, actually mainly my stained glass. This mural is probably the closest aesthetically to my stained glass. So I'm kind of on the way to finding a marriage between the two, because I think a lot of people who work in street art, like work as muralists and work in a different medium, they find a way of combining the two, because a mural doesn't often translate onto a canvas or onto a piece of paper. So it's kind of trying to find that happy medium. So hopefully I'm getting there with that. But yeah, like architecture is always something I reference in the work and reference in that work. So like that piece is called Rising to the Bait, and it's through Ardú, through the Street Art Initiative, and Ardú means to rise, and the whole idea was that kind of like rising up, trying to lift the energy of the city, kind of after all the kind of hardship that we've gone through over the last year and a half. Well, the last year at the time I suppose when they were all produced in October. So it's rising to the bait, and it's kind of looking at just like a fisherman fishing for salmon in the Lee. But then with that architecture behind it, there's a lot of poignance to that architecture, like, because as you said, like the waterworks there is like a beautiful piece of like industrial architecture, functional architecture, I suppose is the word, but like aesthetically pleasing. And then obviously St. Anne's behind, or St. Kevin's, or all the different names that are on, but St. Anne's, like what was known in Cork up to, and still with some people, like was known as the madhouse, and it kind of like reflects our like understanding of like mental health and the awful things that happen in the country over time. And that was kind of just like, when something can be so beautiful, like architecture, but how like a building's function has its own kind of meaning. So that was kind of the idea behind that. And then also like just with the rest of the piece, the idea of like the Lee being like kind of like the blood like flowing through the city, and that we're all obsessed with the Lee, like for like the right reasons and the wrong reasons, and it floods and it wrecks the city, and we love it one minute, and it's like our worst, it's our best friend one minute and our worst enemy the next minute. But also its relationship with the moon. So like the moon would feature in a lot of my stained glass pieces, and that kind of ever presence, but it's the relationship between like the tidal nature of the Lee and that idea of kind of rising as well. So there's a lot that was kind of, I suppose, I kind of packing a lot into one thing, and then you're painting, and then you're like, actually, maybe it's about that as well. And then that becomes part of it as well, or because someone says it to you, someone asks you, especially because it's on the street. And I think that's the thing as well. Seeing an artist paint, it's like coming into their studio, and that's going back to what we were saying earlier on. So people bring stuff up, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe that's what I was getting at, Or people say, or like fellas go walk past, they're like, I caught a salmon down on that spot there last week, or someone showed me a picture of like, so you're kind of going back to that relationship with the people. It's that relationship with people that are passing by, and it's theirs, and they get ownership from it. But you also kind of get ideas about what the piece is about when you talk to them,